I'm going to stay sitting and I'm not going to use the microphone. There must be something in the SNP water, Kenny, that makes us all loud enough to probably not need a mic. But if I do drop down, anybody in the back row, just hold up their hands and I will get the mic. The other thing as well, I've realised as I've reached middle age, is that I'm more vain than I thought. And when I refused the offer of varifocals the last time I was at the opticians, it has necessitated working with 2 sets of glasses, and needless to say I've managed to forget my reading glasses tonight. So if I might end up having to take these off, and if I'm squinting at you, please don't take it personally. It just means I'm trying to kind of focus as we go along. So I also had lots of thoughts around what I could say to public service workers, and then realised that actually all the other speakers would have much more relevant things to say than I might on that subject, because they know more about it. But I do have some thoughts and, needless to say, opinions on jobs and public services in an independent Scotland, and hopefully when we get into questions and discussion, maybe share those with you. But I wanted actually to just kind of talk about why I think independence is really important for women in Scotland. And the really sad death of Margot just a few weeks ago brought home how many people have actually been lost on this long journey to independence, and it got me to reflecting on some of the people I've been quite close to throughout my life, being involved in this cause. And one of those was my godmother, Margaret Ewing. She and my mum became best friends at university, and I think they met over scrapping over a boy or fags or something, but eventually they became best friends. And one of the things that they did was that they revived the then moribund Student Nationalist Association, but before they got to that, they actually reformed the Student Marxist Society, because quite by chance, as it happened, they were hunting in a cupboard for the banner for Gusna and came across this majestic, big, impressive banner for the Marxist Society. Well, exactly that, Colin, we're having that, is what they decided. So off they went, and they kind of gave it a wash up, and they took it to the front of every single march and rally. Now, they didn't have very many members. There was themselves and another couple of folk, and that was it. But they made sure that they were at the front of every single march and rally that happened in the 60s, and there were plenty of them. And what happened was it gave the impression that they were at the front and everybody else was in their group and following them, and that they were leading that. And so I thought that was a bit like the No campaign today, really, then, because effectively what they have is a large banner of media support and establishment support, which gives the impression, the erroneous impression, frankly, that Scotland is on their side, because everything that we are seeing in the last few months today is that Scotland is not on their side, and Scotland is moving to Yes's side. Over the years, I've learned a lot from Margaret Ewing and Margaret Bain, as she was when she was my godmother, or she started out as my godmother, about her campaigning techniques, and also about why independence was important, not just to Scotland, but to the people of Scotland. She was the one who would insist on us leafleting school gates in the morning and at 3 o'clock in SNP by-elections. And at first it used to make me wonder why, when I was dragged along to kind of go and stand at these school gates, because actually it is a good place to reach women and to reach out to women, because you're not asking them to come out of where their domain is necessarily and come into public meetings like this, where a lot of them don't feel comfortable and wouldn't dream of stepping over the door or coming to a public meeting like this, but they would stop and talk politics at the school gates. And for me, that was a really valuable lesson to learn. And do you know what? Edinburgh Women for Independence were out doing exactly the same thing this week, 20 odd years after I learned the trick from Margaret Ewing, that you go out to places where women feel comfortable talking about politics and where they might want to engage you. And actually, we had a fantastic cafe drop-in at the Super Saturday this morning, up in the Inch, out there in the scheme, where women who wouldn't normally talk politics were coming through the door on the pretext of coming in for their cup of coffee and cake, and more than happy to sit down, and we converted lots of women and registered even plenty as well to vote. And I rather think that Margaret Ewan would have been quite at home in that kind of setting. I don't think she'd ever have called herself a feminist though, far from it. She wasn't a fan of positive discrimination in any form, but then sometimes it's how you act and what you do rather than what you say. And just as she had this thing about leafleting at the school gates and engaging women there, I also remember I found some leaflets through a mutual friend. We were going through a big box of old SNP materials, and we came across one of the leaflets for her campaign in 1974 when she won East Bartonshire for the SNP. I know, and the language would make you cringe now, but effectively her campaign was predicated around reaching out to women and targeting housewives, and why independence was the best option for women in Scotland. And she always did try to reach out to women, and I think probably sensing instinctively that their votes would be vital to winning Scotland's independence, and so it is proving to be. Throughout my life, I've compromised my career choices for family responsibilities. I've watched local authorities, Labour-led local authorities in the last 20 years, spend millions in legal fees to avoid paying women in some of the lowest paid occupations their fair rate and the same as men. I've seen women I know fly high in their careers only to plummet to earth as soon as they become pregnant. A friend of mine, whose wee boy is now 4 months old, she was the national training coordinator for a major bank, and as soon as she was about to take her maternity leave, was made redundant. It still goes on all over companies, all over Scotland every day, that women are discriminated against because they are women. Now, Labour recently published 5 pledges for women. They were offering more free childcare, better pay, and my favourite, that they would require companies to publish their pay gap. It's all good because it's come in response that suddenly women and women's needs and interests are central to this debate and discussion that we are having as a nation. But it's not good enough. More and better are no longer good enough. I don't want pay gaps for women anymore, still less to have to read about them. I want the equal pay promised to women 40 years ago to become a reality. I want free childcare as a right, as an acknowledgement that investing in this reaps economic benefits down the line. Just as the White Paper has done, it's put free childcare as a transformational shift front and central to its ambitions for independence, not as a women's issue, but rightly as a key plank of economic infrastructure, and so it should be. And I also want better economic and social support, society support, that enables women to stay at home with a clear conscience and raise their children, because as a society we recognise that actually that might be the right choice for some women, because it's also good for children. I'm tired of waiting for the UK to make good on its promises for women. Things are worse now for women than they ever have been in my lifetime. Austerity cuts have hurt women and indirectly children the hardest, particularly women on the lowest incomes. They are being hit the hardest. Look at the research from and the data provided by the likes of the Institute of Fiscal Studies. They are the ones paying the price for the bank's folly, and it's their lives that are being hurt in the process. But it's not just working age women. Older women are worse off and continue to be worse off. They face a whammy of reaching retirement now later, still with compromised state pensions because of the wee stamp issue that none of the UK parties have ever promised to make good. And they also have smaller private pension pots because quite often they've had to take career breaks in order to raise children. And they don't just face the risk of fuel poverty in an energy-rich country, but now also food poverty in a state which squanders billions on needless nuclear weapons. I want women of all ages in Scotland to have better. I want to look forward to better in my old age, which is hurtling rapidly towards me. I want better for my sons and the women they're going to have in their lives and in their families. I'm not so naive to think that independence is this magic wand and suddenly everything will be all right. We are going to have to work hard, but at least we are thinking about the needs and interests, particularly of women, in a different way. And for the first time in my lifetime, their interests are at the forefront of the debate about the kind of Scotland we want to be. Who'd have thunk it? But we'll also have to work hard to unvest all those interests of their privileges, the ones that have kept women in their place for far too long. But voting yes is the only way we get the chance of change, of creating an equal society for women, which is fairer and which offers them better. Margot, in one of her last ever interviews, summed it up perfectly for me. It's a sentiment, frankly, that, I wish I was good enough to have the kind of thoughts that she had. I also think that, Margaret, you might have agreed as well. This is our time of reckoning. We have to take it. And if we don't take it, we are consigning our children to much, much less. Certainly narrower horizons, lower aspirations. We are consigning our children to being small when we should be giving them a much bigger world. I don't want any child, and I especially don't want little girls to grow up facing the discrimination and the gaps and the worse off than this generation of women have had to do. I don't want any child to be small. I want them to walk tall in an independent Scotland.